Hi, my name is Monica Walker, and I'm here today with John Sweetnam. I've been having conversations with people who are thought leaders and interesting people to talk to about creating powerful change. And so I'm here today to just have a chat with John about his new program called Conflict Evolution. So, John, can you just tell me a bit, how does this program relate to people when there's so much conflict in a busy modern life that we're experiencing?
Well, thank you, Monica, for dropping in. And wow, conflict. Yes, it does seem to be more active in my life, and maybe it's active in your life, and seems more present than a dozen years ago. And so I've been in the coaching, training business since '92. And I would say there's more conflict today and every day. And I might even hazard to say there's maybe twice as much, 3 times as much every day. So it got us to thinking, it got me to thinking, what do we do as human beings when there's that much energy needed to handle, and really conflict's an energy. So I got really curious about that. And how does our program solve the riddle? Well, it opens us up to expanding our awareness of what is conflict. That's where we start. What really is conflict? How does it look in a normal day?
Well, for me, conflict starts with, actually for myself and for many people, with maybe just not even having enough sleep. So you wake up and maybe in a space where you don't feel as rested as you might like, and then you start maybe having negative thoughts about your day. You've got stress at work, maybe your relationships, there's stress, or just even little disharmonies and things. And then actually going out into the world where there are the larger issues affecting us, where there's bigger conflicts in the workplace, in the world at large, just things that are making us feel emotional dis-ease.
Emotionally?
Emotional dis-ease.
Mm-hmm. So we're very uncomfortable, I'm hearing, with how many ways we sense there's unrest, and things are unsettled and uncertain in the world around us, personally and professionally. So that was one of the key points of this program. It was for inner and outer conflict, for the inside self and for the outer world around us. And that's where we need to start. And it goes right back to Socratic thinking of know thyself. So if we had to take an initial footprint, initial step forward into resolving or being present with the issues, challenges, and situations that many of us label as conflict, we'd want to know what's happening with us, what's happening for us, inside of us, and what's the trigger, what's the moment to which we sort of feel overwhelmed, if I heard you saying that, there's so much, or feeling bent out of shape, or maybe even attacked, or just downright tired of being tired of it. So that's where we're at today, is to really share a few insights as to how valuable it is to have a process that makes sense. It has a few simple steps that will guide us when we are tired. It's kind of like white lines in the road. You can trust, even in the dark of night, even when you're going home and work tired, that people will stay on their side of the road and you can stay on yours. There's kind of a boundary marker, and there's kind of a safety zone, and there's a shoulder to pull off on if you need to. And that's our process. Have some controls, have some boundary markers, have a process where you can pull it off to the side, how you can slow it down when the traffic's heavy, and how you can stay safe. How does that sound when I say, there can be conflict all around us, but I can be safe and I can slow down my response to it?
I think that feels amazing when I hear that, because for me, oftentimes the very issue with conflict is that you feel afraid. So feeling fear, being in a place that feels safe, maybe for myself, would feel helpful to being able to look at it in the first place so I can make a change.
So one of the keys that I think that came out of that need for safety, and I think that would resonate with a lot of the clients who are coming to me, is they didn't feel safe. It felt too vulnerable, it felt too threatening, it had been going on too long. They didn't even know where to start. In fact, some of the conflict issues as a coach that my long-term clients were bringing to me had gone on for 12 years, and some longer. Some as long as 54. I think the longest issue was 54 years I personally dealt with, but average conflict was going on for 4 years. 4 months would be a young conflict, hardly got legs yet. But it wasn't just the 4 months, it wasn't the 4 years, it was the amount of numbers of conflicts that was starting to bring people down. That was relentless, ongoing, to the point where people were just tired of one more day, one more issue, one more situation, one more challenge, and the number of conflict resolution programs out there, from conversations, this, all got them trapped in what they thought about it. It all seemed to take them back to what I think about it. And it didn't give them the strategies necessarily to help other people get through it. And most importantly, how do they release themselves from being trapped in the fear that you mentioned around conflict? And out of that, we deliberately chose a heart-based approach.
Can you explain what do you mean by heart-based approach as opposed to maybe a head-based approach?
And that is a big question that we're still working on in lots of ways, but the definition from my point of view is that the heart has a brain. We know that now. 10 years ago, it was a pump, pumping out blood like pumping a bicycle. Today we know, as many people have known, proven since the 30s, that the heart is much more of an energy system within the body. And the heart has brains, neurons, dendrites, and it's a smaller brain than the heart, but it's very interconnected until how our heart opens our brain to respond, hopefully for the best, but sometimes more as a reaction. So energetically, the heart triggers emotions. And what we now know, without reservation, the emotions drive the thought process of the brain. So it's not just what I think about, it's the emotions that are happening under the cover like an iceberg. All these emotions are driving that little precipice, what we call the thought about it. And that's the challenge, is most people definitely see the strategies, they definitely see the reaction, but they haven't been fully aware of the amount of the iceberg that's under the water. I'm told 80 or 90%. And that's the emotional body to which the heart has some domain over.
Right. You had said something about people feeling difficulty with staying in that experience of not knowing. That's what causes us stress a lot of time, because there's an uncertainty about that. How do you, and would you say that's maybe connected to those underlying feelings that feel like a weight for us?
Well, I think you've got that right. There is that connection. I think it's normal human nature to want certainty. And with that in mind, we are in very fast-changing times, and I think that in itself, in our times we're in now at 2016, creates for some more uncertainty than others. 20% might roll with it. 20% might thrive in it. The truth is, the majority of the clients who come to see me can handle various amounts of it. For some, 18%, metaphorically, of course, some 30%, some are 50-50. But for others, it's just become the very onerous, very over the top, bringing people to states of overwhelm, procrastination, frustration, annoyance, most of all, just going home exhausted.
So where does the conflict evolution program, what kind of key principles or components does it provide that can support us with those experiences?
Well, the nice thing about a heart-based approach is the heart gives you a yes or no answer. It's intuitive, which a lot of women, even us guys, give the ladies credit for being intuitive. Naturally connected to their inner sense of inner knowing, like an innate wisdom, something maybe we're born with or that's part of who we are as human beings. And we've always allowed that women have more of that natural connection to intuitive knowing. It doesn't that men don't have it, but women have been more available to increasing that skill or that set is a very, and we validate it all the time. Oh yeah, my wife would know, or my girlfriend would know, or whatever. And for guys, not so much. They just steal up the notion that they need to have feelings. In fact, in my generation, I grew up in, you had a stiff upper lip, so to speak, from the British side of the family, to hard work Irish who just ignored the pain and worked through it. And not I would say the first 21 years of my life, there wasn't much allowed for feelings. And I say allowed, because there was a lot, in our family history, almost as addictive as some might consider drugs, was hard work. That you feel about it was of no consequence, no to me. So getting connected to feelings, which are happening and driving emotions underneath this iceberg metaphor, we hadn't paid attention to it. So when people are in the intuitive mind, intuitive body, they're getting connected to what the body is telling them. Not in words, but in feelings, but in little sensory indicators. Maybe you feel a sense of warmth in your heart when you intuitively know something is right. Maybe you feel something like I do in the pit of your stomach when something you know is wrong. You can't name it, can't put your finger on it. Somebody couldn't pin you down, you say, there it is. But inside, you're very, very connected that this isn't right, or wow, this is great. And a lot of the times, especially when we're meeting people, we don't go into breaking it all apart and trying to overanalyze it. Different with conflict. When we have ongoing conflict, we go home and sleep on it. Maybe you're like me and you wake up at 3 in the morning and think about it. Maybe it's the last thing before you go to bed, and maybe it could be so rampant as to be the first thing you think about when you wake up. Oh my gosh, I got to meet Tom again today, or Helen or somebody, and it's going to be a problem. So that's kind of how the heart being connected to a feeling inside, a yes or no, that we can be attuned to what's a win-win for us and for others.
I really relate to what you're saying, and I think probably a lot of people do, to just this experience of, well, we know inside ourselves, don't we, that when something doesn't feel right, or when something does feel right, there's a kind of resonance or a flow that happens, and a good feeling when we're in alignment with ourselves and with other people, and when we're not, and we're being bombarded and we're overwhelmed. I can certainly say for myself that I feel that very strongly in my body, and it can become burdensome after time. So I'm wondering, when we take this stress that we're feeling and we bring it home to our families, or we're taking it into places, we're not able to manage it because there's just such an overflow happening all the time. Where do we start? Where do we start with this, with what you're offering through conflict evolution? How as individuals, can we start to address that for ourselves?
Well, I'd like to start with the why. I work on why would we want to do that? What is it about? How do we do it? And what if we had it working? So I'll just stay in that 4 simple parts. So the why would really be, why do we want to do this? Because when we can find the signals in our body, we'll notice they're consistent. We may have 2 or 3 spots in our body that start to light up or energize, or we feel connected to when we know something's right. And so just slowing down, taking a break. Maybe it's like you and I sitting here having a cup of tea. So step back just far enough from the conflict or issue or situation to really have space. So we step back and we get a hot cup of tea, and if it's at the lake, I love going down to the dock and dangling my toes in the water. And if we're going for hiking, I love hiking in the mountains, just sitting on the edge of a bluff somewhere, and you're looking over the valleys, and it's expansive and opening. And you'll notice on our website we chose that kind of a view, because for me, since the 70s of hiking in the mountains of the Himalayas, it became rampant with me of how expanding it was. And I think sometimes we get too constrictive. Sometimes we try to protect ourselves. And so step 1 is, why do we want to do that? To be free again. As little kids, playing, to be open, to be alive, to be available to life, to be welcoming, to be inviting. And all of those things get blocked when we are feeling constricted because of conflict. So the why is to become real again, to become little playful people again, to become awake, aware, just available to life. And I think that speaks why. That's the why of why we went to the intuitive heart-based approach. Get connected to ourselves. I know Socrates said it 2,000 years ago. For me, it's still the key. Get to know in yourself what's driving conflict or issues. And the second, what is conflict today? Well, conflict is anything that I guess just doesn't sit well with you. If you call it conflict, it's going to show up as conflict. And we might call it a working issue, a situation, a challenge, just the normal state of everyday relationship quandary. How do two people with different energies relate? That could be conflictual. But how we internalize it and how it plays out, that's what gives it the energy level that can be so destructive.
Right.
So the key step, step back, slow down, take a breath, have a cup of tea, go for a walk. Just step back from it, not disengage, but step back enough to reconnect with ourselves. How many times have you, I know I have, rushed into something, oh, I'm ready to go, and then be totally a little bit rude or aggressive, or let my team member feel attacked, and not really being present. I was just so overly engaged with doing battle, almost like that I had really trampled people. I really felt it. So that's kind of where I would like to say is that slowing down and being grateful that we're more than we think we are. To be in gratitude that we actually are more, and there's more to know about it. There's ways for us to be present. There's more choice. And there's more opportunity for us to have a win-win and to have an outcome perhaps we never even thought of. That'll be more peaceful, more harmonious, more engaging, and definitely a win-win.
Can you give an example of some situation you've dealt with in your work with conflict evolution where you saw that transformation happen?
Well, I did couples work for about 12 years, relationship coaching. And my first foray into it, I'd have to give everybody their money back because I was caught up in designing and working with clients who wanted better strategies to overcome relationship challenges, people being different. And I was kidding one of my partners the other day. I said, it's like toilet paper over the top or toilet paper under the bottom, or tube on a not lipstick top, but definitely toothpaste. Do we put the top on the toothpaste or do we not? And these are small little things, but over time we do have a number of things. And my thing is, I like a clean kitchen. I like my countertop clean. When I make dinner, I wash my pots as I cook. Like chef, I want to be like I'm hanging my brass pots up there and the kitchen's gleaming. And when the dinner rolls out, the kitchen looked like it had always been clean and was still clean. I've somehow chosen relationship partners who love to cook with the same gusto and appreciation, but all the pots are at the end and the sink is overflowing with pots. And like it's a non-issue because the food is excellent, but it's the way we roll out. So it's not what we do, it's how we do it.
Right.
So conflict is often a how rather than what. It's often some way we are just being ourselves. And those that are comfortable with the sink full of dirty dishes are totally cool with it. And some would go to sleep till the next morning, get up and do it in the morning. I couldn't go to bed and sleep at night with my sink full of dirty dishes. That would be an insult to come down in the morning. And years ago, it was like throwing out empty beer bottles and thank gosh, no more cigarettes. But I couldn't go to sleep knowing I had to come down in the morning my golden hours, and have that to deal with. So that's just self-induced conflict not because a person I'm working with or living with is wrong. Their model is significantly different.
Right.
But it challenges my way of representing my model of the world.
Right.
And it's that silly simple.
I can absolutely relate to that, and I think when I find myself in a conflict situation like that, so often I think I can see that, I see what's going on there. I see that I'm stuck, or that I'm, maybe that how I'm behaving isn't really appropriate. But then to get from that place in my head of, okay, I'm aware, I'm in a conflict, I'm not perceiving this other person or the situation accurately even, but how do I deal with it? Then it's like, how do I bring something forward within myself that's going to actually, some practical something or other that I can just apply, or some way to shift out of that, okay, I'm aware, I'm aware of what's going on here. How do I change it?
So that's the essence of our first presupposition for heart-based conflict resolution, and it's gratitude. It seems to be from the readings and the authorship of today's gurus in the holistic marketplace that gratitude is a precursor to the emotions which give us a sense of well-being. So for me, it's always been, what am I grateful for here? Am I grateful we're having this night meal? Am I grateful that we've got dishes to cook in? Am I grateful we got this wonderful group of friends who came to join us today? Am I grateful that everything turned out well? Am I grateful nobody got burned at cooking, anything could happen? Am I grateful that the souffle was up or the wine was extra perfect tonight or whatever? Sometimes you just have a meal that comes out and the salad was particularly chilled or the dressing was particularly poignant. It was just something. And so as I get more grateful about what we do have and what is working, I find that somehow the little nags about, one more dirty pot, because I don't know what it is, but I see some people putting out dinner and there's a pot for everything. It's like Thanksgiving dinner where you've got 2 cranberry pots, 3 gravy boats. You've got a little bit for the squash, some for the corn, some for the pea. You get done and there's more dishes on the table. And when you go to get done, it sounds like you're doing more time washing up than you were eating, as a metaphor. So being grateful, wow, Thanksgiving dinner, homemade cranberries. I don't care if there's 3 or 4 dishes. It just is meaningful when I can get in a state of gratitude for all the good things.
So John, how do you do that when you're in the moment and something is just really displeasing you in some way?
Well, that's a good question, and I have to say that I used to let people deplete me because I was a pleaser. In some ways still am, but I stopped worrying whether or not people are going to love me if I have some boundaries around or get some of my needs met. So I'm not less apt to do it because I think you might want me to do that and I want you to be happy, and I don't want to do something because you're our best friends. You come over for dinner and I'm going to do something and then you won't come back and now I won't feel loved and I won't feel right or something won't be good or whatever. I just stop tripping on myself and say, this is something I value. I will do the dishes, but I will not interrupt the conversation and the energy around until we're completed a certain stage where maybe we're going to take a break for dessert. And then I'll wash up and be comfortable. But I have to say, wow, I'm the one that could ruin the evening by putting myself out of shape. And these are my best friends, and starting to do the dishes now to make a point is not only rude, it's ignorant, and it doesn't solve anything. So it's as simple as that, to step back and say, wow, we have a very special moment here. And I don't know, in the last year, I found that getting special moments with friends is very precious. We're all so busy. Getting our 4 favorite friends together is sometimes it's not happening as much as I'd like it all, and people are so busy. And so I think that if we can slow down, recognize that I have choice, recognize that I do have control, recognize that I can be useful without being helpful, recognizing I don't have to please others, recognize I don't have to be right, recognize there's no perfect way to do everything, recognize that some of the things I do people like and some they already don't like anyway. So it's just being able to accept myself for the goodness of who I am in the moment. I'm enough.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process, mind you, but it's just to know I'm enough that I can be present with and grateful. So it's really taking a breath. On the end, you're going in the glow. Wow, I probably get to see Bill and Betty. I haven't seen them for a long time. Or I get to see Adrian and Rob. I haven't seen them for a while. Just breathing in that, wow. And wow, that vegetarian, because a lot of my friends are alternative, they eat uniquely, and they're vegetarian or want more gluten-free. And the gluten-free pasta actually tasted okay. And I'm pretty excited by that, because some of the beginning sawdust I ate didn't seem to make it for me. So sometimes I just have to make it a little bit fun like that and go back and say, wow, tonight our gluten-free pasta really rocks. And then I'm lighthearted and I'm saying, wow, thank you. And I end up by being grateful, saying to myself, I love this group of people. I'm sorry I brought in that stupid itty-bitty talk from the mind, that I connected to my heart in love, and I can say, wow, thank you. And thank you for coming today. I think we're just about out of time, but thank you for asking that.
Thank you, John, for being here.